Welcome to this AMUG special episode of AM Infocast. As a part of this episode, it is a great pleasure interacting with Fadi Abro, Global Director Transportation at Stratasys. Join me in this conversation where Fadi shares the latest trends with use of additive manufacturing in the automotive and transportation sector, specific examples where AM is making a difference, his top 3 applications for 3D printing in the transportation sector, and his views on what makes AMUG one of the key events on the global AM events calendar. Welcome, Fadi, and great to have you on this podcast, and thanks for speaking to us today.
Appreciate you so much for having me. Looking forward to the conversation. Thank you.
Great. And so you've been part of the additive manufacturing industry for quite a few years. So from your perspective, how has additive manufacturing evolved over all these years it's been around, and what key trends are you observing specifically in the automotive and transportation industry as we enter 24 and looking beyond from here?
Yeah, thank you for the question. It feels like a lifetime. I've been in the additive space for almost 14 years now. I joined at a company called Solid Concepts, which is now called Stratasys Direct Manufacturing after it was absorbed by Stratasys in 2014. Started on the engineering side, solving customer problems. And I'll tell you, in the 14 years, there's been a lot. My first experience with a 3D printed part, I didn't know much. I just was looking for an engineering job and I found one. And my first experience was with an SLA that somebody handed me and said, "Hey, this is a 3D printed part." I'm like, "Oh, that's amazing. This is made just directly from CAD." And I go to put a little bend into it and I shatter it. I snapped the part. So that was sort of my first exposure to a 3D printed part. Now, again, that was 14 years ago. And I would say what's really changed in the AM space has been just the vast development, not just in equipment, but in the materials, in the software interface. We're sort of entering in AI and how that's going to help with various use cases. But I'll say the biggest change that I've noticed, over a decade or so has been the advancements in materials, material properties, longevity of those materials, and then couple that with just the advancements in the hardware and their ability to run those more complex materials, photopolymers or thermosets or thermoplastics, but also at the speed at which they can run some of these materials. So I would say material, hardware, and speed have all just, exponentially improved over the past, 10 to 14 years that I've had exposure to it. In terms of what trends we see, specific to additive, I'd say the trend seems to be around software integration and kind of making that easier for the customer. We've had a lot of focus on hardware and materials, but not a lot of focus on hardware. I see some of that. A lot of focus on speed, throughput, cost per parts, all the things that make us, in this industry, a good solution to go against traditional manufacturing or to be side by side with traditional manufacturing. In terms of the auto space specifically, it's really a focus on EVs and the kind of the electrical revolution. You probably hear in the news for the past couple of years that EVs are skyrocketing. Companies are introducing a bunch of EV vehicles. Startups are popping up. Tesla's doing well. All of those things drive towards the use of additive manufacturing in a couple of different ways. We can get into them here. One is you have to prototype all these new vehicles. So the tried and true application of additive manufacturing has always been prototyping. That is how we're known. That's still a valuable add to a customer experience if you're developing a new vehicle or if you're revamping an existing vehicle. And then on the tooling and production support side, how the car comes together. You need to get these cars out the door and get them to consumers. 3D printing and additive manufacturing is being used there. Sort of the assembly and the production support of the process. And then, of course, kind of the third pillar is production itself. And there's a couple of different avenues in the transportation segment there, but mostly it's around these kind of low volume vehicles and getting those parts onto low volume vehicles. You're talking maybe a couple of thousand, maybe 20, 10,000, something like that. People don't want to go and make an injection mold for a particular part or particular component. You could do direct digital printing, get those parts on the car, and get the car to the consumer.
Yeah, I think that's been a interesting shift, and with the EVs, with the number of cars being manufactured at a different scale, I think that's very much possible to use additive manufacturing with a toolless or more-less process, which kind of speeds it up, and with the changes also, they can keep changing the designs, more customized models. So I think it's a great application for additive manufacturing. You know, just changing the track a bit. AMUG in the US has been also evolving over these many years as 3D printing has moved on, because being a user group where the real conversations happen and feedback comes in. What's your personal experience with this event and your expectations for this year from it, as users come together and discuss, taking the industry forward?
Yeah, another good question. Thank you. I think when I look at AMUG, there are conferences that are very technical in nature and really provide a lot of value. There's conferences that are fun in nature and provide a lot of the social networking and all that. AMUG happens to be one that kind of does both really well, in my opinion. I've been going to AMUG for quite a few years, and my kind of always one takeaway is, man, I had so many good conversations in such a short amount of time. With competitors, with friends, with ex-coworkers, but with most importantly, with customers who are trying to enable this technology inside of their various verticals or various businesses. Stratasys has been part of AMUG since 2012, since it sort of opened up to be what it is today. And we value that interaction with the customer. Ultimately, customers are going to be educated, so we get the opportunity to educate them on what's new at Stratasys in the industry, across verticals, that kind of thing. But then also, we just get that ability to network where it makes sense. You can stand at a podium and tell people things about, your speeds and feeds and material properties and all that. But some of the networking also really provides a lot of value to do a deep dive. Often in a presentation, customers don't want to raise their hand and say, this is my application, and make it public to the room. So we can have those conversations, at some of the social events and the networking parts of it too. So I just love the combination of sort of educational and fun for AMUG. That's probably my favorite takeaway from that.
Yeah, that's been my experience as well. Of course, I've just been there a year last year, and I look forward to this year as well. But I think that has been a differentiator. It kind of brings all the aspects together in one event, rather than just being only a serious educational event. I think it adds that fun element, so people open up a little more, I guess, to discussing with each other and the challenges and the opportunities. And that being said, of course, Stratasys has been a pioneer in the additive manufacturing industry now. One of the inventors of one of the technologies, continuously being at the forefront as one of the leaders. And there's been a lot of dynamic changes happening in the past couple of years. So how is Stratasys adapting its solutions to meet these evolving needs of businesses? Because as the needs and the requirements change, is there any specific steps you are taking?
Yeah, look, at the end of the day, Stratasys is focused on the customer, right? So step number one is what are the customer needs? And that's where we focus. What we're finding is that customers are looking to untangle and make their supply chains less complicated. For us, what that means in additive, you don't have to go to 4 different additive suppliers to have 4 different additive solutions. So Stratasys, first and foremost, is diverse the portfolio so that if you need powder, if you need filament, if you need resin, all of those things are available to you from a single supplier that sort of has the network already built in for both sales, for service, for engineering, those kinds of things. And then, one layer deeper, those solutions are being catered towards applications, right? So we're not just saying, here's a printer that can print a 3-foot part. We're saying, this is the application. In automotive, it's tooling. It's how the car comes together. In aerospace, it's ducting with characterized materials that do X, Y, Z. In medical, it's a tissue that feels like a human heart. These are the things that we're going after and communicating directly with the customer on these applications. As far as sort of what we're doing and things that are changing our own product line, I see artificial intelligence, automation coming in. That's going to help additive manufacturing be more precise, faster. It's going to improve DFAM. It's going to improve identification of applications. That's sort of next steps, right? But for now, what we're doing is we're tailoring our solutions, we're diversifying our portfolio, and we're getting at the heart of applications.
Yeah, that sounds good. But can you elaborate on specific examples, more from the automotive and the transportation sector, where you are seeing significant growth potential, and for the applications going forward?
Yeah. So of course, I lead the automotive and transportation vertical at Stratasys, so this is near and dear to my heart. I will say what happens is, I mentioned earlier, prototyping. We're well known. We, the industry, Stratasys specifically, are well known to be a company and an industry that can support on the prototyping space. Again, nothing wrong with that. We need it. It's a use case. What most people do is they jump right to the production. They say, okay, well, I've prototyped it. Can I just make it in production? At the end of the day, if you're looking at traditional vehicles that have high volumes, let's just say an F-150, they make about 1,000 F-150s a day, roughly. And so that's not the right place for additive to look at production. But if you could make 1,100 F-150s a day, you've just added nearly $1 million a day to your revenue if you're Ford or Ram or Chrysler or Stellantis, whoever it is. You can get more cars out the door. All of a sudden, you've improved your revenue. So how do you get more cars out the door? You make that assembly process much more efficient. How do you do that? You go with custom tooling. You do with kind of go-no-go fixtures, assembly aids, badge locators. You reduce the complexity in manufacturing. I would say, the out of those three applications, what is the most overlooked still today. Now, if you're in the additive industry, you can't believe it's still overlooked, but that production support, tooling, jigs, and fixtures application is immensely powerful, because again, if you can get 10 more cars out the day, that's nearly $1 million more depending on the car. And so if you can use that for tooling, so that's been the biggest growth engine and biggest growth area, the biggest home run win for a lot of automakers who are adopting our technology and adopting 3D printing in general, is supporting the production. I can tell you that a lot of the OEMs, the traditional OEMs who are shifting to electrification, even the true startup OEMs, the true EV startups, are putting our equipment in the plant to support production. We're not talking about printing an FDM part and putting it in a car. We're talking about printing a tool that helps you get more cars out the door, because demand is there. In automotive, the demand's there. People are buying vehicles. So how fast you can produce them and get them to the market is very, very critical for these companies.
Yeah, that's interesting, and it's good to see that you are kind of moving along with the customer needs to see how you can provide more technology, and so that they can have a faster production cycle. Because that's what counts, right? You have to be useful, and that's why they want to use this technology, not just because it's 3D printing. It's because it fits and creates some revenue for them. I think that's a valid point there. We've spoken about transportation and automotive, since it's your kind of core piece of work. But if you were to select like the 3 top applications for additive manufacturing today, could be from transportation, could be from across, but could you kind of summarize that into maybe top 3 applications you see would bring the next growth for you?
Yeah, another good question. So, if you look at a high level, it's kind of what I said: prototyping, production support, production. If I was to go specifically inside of these kind of broader buckets and say, what are the applications? I would say inside of prototyping, where we're seeing a lot of activity, is around wind tunnel testing. So this is where high fidelity technologies like SL, like PolyJet, like DLP, that have really beautiful finish and to play well. because customers can take an SLA machine, make a part, figure out the aerodynamics of that. And again, in electrification, a tiny bit of change can get you 10 more miles, can get you 50 more miles. So inside of prototyping, I'd say wind tunnel model seems to be the biggest kind of growth and interest. We're seeing that a lot with our SLA platform, the Neo 800. Inside of the tooling bucket, it's really about ergonomic assembly aids. So if I'm operator number 1 on the first shift, and there's an operator number 3 on the third shift, and we're, I'm a foot taller than that person, or they're a foot taller than me, we make a custom tool that helps their particular process, their particular assembly, the check that they're doing, whatever it is, make it more ergonomic for that person. We can make it blue for me is for first shift and red for third shift. And then all of a sudden, everyone is poka-yoked. They understand where their roles and responsibilities are, what tools they should use. They're made ergonomically. And, again, if you can get an extra second, an extra 30 seconds, those are very meaningful changes in the tooling world. And then inside the production bucket, I would say the biggest kind of growth engine there for us, it's really split into 2 service parts. So these are parts that don't exist anymore because you don't want to create a whole another injection mold or tool up a whole thing for Toyota emblem from 1999. You can 3D print those things from a spare parts perspective, and then also the aftermarket perspective. So again, aftermarket's highly customizable, low volume. We have a great use case with our powder technology, the SAF technology with a company called Rouse. Camera mount and a camera cover, 2,000 units a year. Made no sense to injection mold that thing, and they decided to put it right there into their production on the exterior of a vehicle. So just really good use case there.
Yeah, that's really interesting to get to know of these specific applications, which really helps to understand the actual use here of this technology. And thanks for sharing these. We discussed earlier that AMUG, which is coming up in a couple of months, is different from other events on the global AM calendar. What are the main drivers for Stratasys to be part of it? Because I understood the personal, view, but as a company, what's the main drivers to be part of this event?
Yeah, of course, there's what we talked about earlier, which was we're getting to touch the customer. That's sort of the main heartbeat of why we would want to participate. But there is also the fact that we're the biggest company in the space. We are the leader in 3D printing, and we want to participate in these 3D printing events that draw so many people to them. Right? It's maybe a selfish reason, but we need to be there. We're part of the charge leading this technology, and so we want to participate in an event like AMUG. Again, networking is hugely important for us with the customer. But what we kind of find most often is that when customers talk to each other, especially about our technologies, that's much more successful interaction than we maybe would have one-on-one with a customer. So I could say, oh, hey, customer A, you're interested in wind tunnel models using our product. Meet customer B, they're already doing that. You guys go ahead and talk, and I could just walk away. So that is really important for us to kind of facilitate that piece of the networking as well. That attendees are top-notch. They're all users. They're all AM at minimum they're AM interested, but more often than not they're AM users, not just what I would call tire kickers, I guess.
No, great. That's great. And thanks, Fari, for joining us today and sharing your insights, specifically on the transportation and automotive sector, and also broadly talking about the evolution of additive manufacturing and your brief summary on what AMUG is about, and what you like at the event. And thanks for the show, being part of the show, and have a good year ahead. And
I'll make one plug because we're sponsoring a session. If you're interested in this content that I just talked about,
yes,
we're sponsoring a session with Lucid Motors, one of the startup EV companies that will be at AMUG. Come learn about how these EV companies are deploying additive. We're going to meet with one of their users and talk about how 3D printing is enabling them to get more cars out the door. So just a little plug for one of our sessions happening.
Yeah, and that will be exciting. I look forward to understanding and meeting them and seeing how they're using additive manufacturing. And Really wish you well for the year, and see you at DAMAG, because it'll be great to catch up in person.
Looking forward to it. See you there.
See you. Thank you, Fadi.